Hey, how's this sound? I'm starting to set things up here. It's been a while since I fired things up. It's a little hot. Maybe a couple minutes. I'm just cleaning up so that it looks pretty, or somewhat pretty. Apparently Marlin came out with a new version again, so it's gonna be fun. I'm just moving things out of the way for the octopus until I do a couple more tutorials on it. I'm not gonna feature it in the live stream, but I'll do the other stuff. But I just updated my computer, so things might be interesting. Where's everybody from today? Yeah, it looks like Marlin 2.0.9.1 is now the current version of Marlin. So we're gonna see what's going on with it today, because someone said they had an issue. So I'm probably going to start with the SKR 1.2, unless you guys have another board that you want to look at. So I just gotta set these up and get some liquid in me because it's a little hot here. That, and I gotta check the camera. So let's see what we got here. I've gotta make sure the camera's working. And things are centered. And I have the right USB connected here. Let's see, where did it go? Too many wires. That's odd. There it is. Probably gonna look into steppers, so hopefully I've got this set up correctly. Let me get the stepper bar out. Okay, almost got everything positioned. Check on the chat. If you have questions about configurations, now is a good time to post them so I can look at them while I'm doing this. So, how to write a script for heat and timer for filament splicer. Those are probably going to be G codes, and that depends on what you're trying to do. A splicer sounds like either you're converting between two filaments with a device of some type, possibly a servo-driven device, but I'll have to have a little bit more information as to what you're using. But right now I just got to clean this area up a little bit here. And I probably got to fix the graphic. So let me do that real quick. Can you make the music go down a bit? 2 seconds. Let's see, media source. I'm guessing that's it. Can you hear me better now? Let me fix the start screen here. Let's see. Gotta change the date. Okay, that's probably looking a little bit better. Move this over here. And I'll check on the sound in 2 seconds. Okay, the sound's better. That's good. Let's see, Adreno ramps 155. I have a lot of them And I'm thinking about reusing one of them for a filament splice. No stepper or anything that moves, just timed heat. So you're using it as a heater. My guess is you're going to use a G code to turn on and off the heater, and then possibly insert it into your script or G codes for what you're printing. So you're going to have to find what the actual G codes are. We'll look at those as well in a second, just to see what the G codes are. But let me pour something real quick, like some blueberry juice or something. Let's see how this is going for the counter here. So this one's going to be another one of those ones where I'm slightly blind, as Marlin came out with something new, so they might have fixed something or broke something in the last release. So it's going to be slightly interesting. So it looks like Marlin 2.0.91 now. So I think I'll start in just a second here, just to get going early. So we got Marlin for our newest version, which is 2.0.9.1. And I don't know what changed, but we can do the release notes and see what's going on. So down here, this maintenance release includes a number of fixes and improvements from contributors, testers, and code developers. So it says issues fixed. Fixed air assist. I'm guessing that's some kind of air pump of some type. Extruder 0 patch for PWM or pulse width modulation motor current. So that might have something to do with motors. And so pulse width modulation means highs and lows digitally usually. In this case, the high and low is probably going to be 1 or 0 for high or low. That's digital signals or pulse width modulation. Let's see, fixed. Environment validation for the 1280 and 2560 boards. So that's probably something for which environment you use. I'm not sure what they broke, but there's a bug right next to it, so we can easily click on it and see what's going on, hopefully. So, not exactly sure what happened, but the environment validation apparently doesn't work. So now it allows the Mega 1280 chipset. So apparently it didn't before, I guess, or it did previously but not now. Fixed MKS Robin E3 build. Apparently something might have been broken, so let's see what that says. So the build failed because the right scripts aren't executed. So there's something wrong with the way they set it up. And IJK access references, E-stepper indices. So this might be something that people were asking about last week where I was confused. Fixes some references for the E-axis that break compilation. Define extruder 0. As well as new linear axes IJK. Also includes cleanup, standardization for multiple E steppers in M569 and M906, which kind of dovetails into what we were talking about for G codes. So if you go over here and you look at G codes in all documents, you can see what the G codes are. So this explains, for instance, cancel current motion mode. Don't know exactly what it does, but there's a description. But one of the things we were talking about was heating. So set hot end temperature. This is the script question. So M104. And then basically it talks about what the actual description of it is. This would be inserted in your G codes for your file to print. So one of the ways you can do that is, let me open up Cura real quick here. So inside Cura, if this loads quick enough, it might not pop up on the right screen, but give me a second for that. You'll render a particular file into G codes. So hopefully this will load in a second and won't ask for an update. There we go. So in this case, if we go to open something, in this case it's a G code file, so it might render it here so we can see it. Otherwise I'll find something else. This is something that I worked on for something to hold the camera lights and a little thing over the top. But what you can do in here is several things. You can actually pull this file up by going back. Whoop. Let's see if I can open it or reverse out of this. Apparently not, so let's go to prepare. There we go. If I right click on one of these files and I go to edit it in Notepad, you'll see what I'm talking about. Here are the G codes. You would insert your G codes in a line here to control what you want to do. So M107 currently says what? So let's see if I can pull it up here. M107 says fan off. So if your fan is turning off, that's probably due to this command line right here. And it might have to do with ending layer 0. But I am unsure because I'd have to actually watch the movement and then see when the fan goes off. But if you add a G code, you can basically deal with it that way. They might fix some of the issues, but they probably made new ones. That's probably true. But the only way to find that out is to actually load it. So let's see what we got here. Someone said the motors don't move to me earlier today. They didn't say which actual configuration. So let's see if we can see what we got here. So he's talking about the SKR Pro version 1.2. Just configured as your tutorial for the TMC 2208 UART mode. So let's give that a try and see if it works. So I'll show you what I'm looking at. I have a Discord where people can post stuff. Usually if you post it in the general chat, for general open chat, I'll see it most often. The other ones I eventually or sometimes miss comments. So someone asked about thermal runaway. I don't know how to make the TFT35 do that, but there should be a way it pops on there. That's a question more for Big Tree Tech, but we can go into ways to look at that later on. Let's first look at this issue. So I gotta pull up the camera here so we can see what I'm doing. So give me a second to bring it over to my desk. So I have a TMC 2208 that I need to grab, but let me bring this into focus a little bit better. There you go. So on here, we're going to configure the TMC 2208 in UART mode. And I'm going to try and stick to what we did on the actual tutorial. It's been forever and a day since I did the tutorial, and I believe I did it in version 2.0.8.1 or 2. So my memory's kind of faded because we're a whole generation away from that. But here's a TMC 2208. And we're going to set up the x-axis to drive this back and forth. So what I need to do is actually go over to the web browser for a second. And in the browser, we're going to have to find the actual website for the GitHub for the SKR Pro version 1.1. Then we're going to go into the 1.2 folder, and we're going to go to the manual. Inside here, we're going to find the manual. Hopefully I clicked on the right one. This is actually pinned PDF, so it might be confusing. So let's go back. It's actually right here. So this might take a second to load. My computer sometimes is a little slow on the network. And hopefully we'll see something someday. So seeing how it's not working this way for us, I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to download it, and hopefully that'll be quicker. But right now it's downloading, so let's check that folder. And we also have to download, whoop, that's not the folder. We also have to download the actual new updated Marlin. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete a lot of this stuff here and just take it out. And while that's downloading, we'll go grab Marlin. So if we're over here on Marlin's webpage, we'll go to downloads and we'll click on the zip and we'll click OK, and hopefully we'll get a download. So it looks like we got a download here, so I'm going to right click, I'm going to extract all, and then I'm going to click extract. This may take a few moments and I'll check on comments while that's going on. So there are a couple of different things going on here. Everyone's got some questions. Just keep posting them so I can see what you're talking about. First thing we're going to do is check the motors, because someone caught me just before stream and sent a message saying that they couldn't actually move motors. Now I'm not sure which version they're working with inside of Marlin, because there's probably about 100 different ones. Maybe less, maybe more. But here's the actual download and extracted file. Our actual files that we're going to need are going to be in here. So it's first Marlin folder, second Marlin folder. So if we go to here, we can click on Explorer, open folder. We'll go to the downloads folder, the first Marlin folder, the second Marlin folder, and then select the entire folder. This will start to actually load. Now, one of the things that I was talking about with someone today was how to check to make sure that your actual build that you downloaded works. So right now it's set to the default Mega 2560, and the actual motherboard type in this case is going to be, if you search on motherboard, it's going to be for the Ramps 1.4. So we're going to check the actual build to make sure it builds. So I'm going to click the checkbox. This may fail, that's okay. This just gives us an idea of how stable it may be. So at the moment it looks like it's building without issue. Sometimes they put things in the correct order and other times they don't. So if a build fails, hit the checkbox a second time, because something may have built in the interim that was needed for the build that's out of order. So I'm going to go over to the source folder, the core folder, boards.h. I'm going to search on SKR Pro, and that's going to bring me to this board type, which I believe is the 2.0 version. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to double check on my desk real quick. So I'm going to minimize core and source, but keep in mind that it says STM32F4. So that's how we're going to deal with this in a second up here. So the STM32F4 is the folder where our default environment is going to reside. But for the moment, we need to change configuration.h for our motherboard. So I'm going to paste it right here. Then I'm going to go back over to that folder and pick that file. Then I'm going to search on SKR_Pro for our default environment and copy it. And then I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to go to my platformio.ini and paste it here so that we have the right environment. Let's double check the build real quick here. And then we'll go back over to the desktop in a moment and we'll try and install the actual software. But I have to unzip something here. So if we go over to downloads, I have to right click on this and extract all. This is from Big Tree Tech's website because I couldn't open up the PDF on their website. So hopefully I can open it up in this folder. Sometimes when you live stream, things don't work as you would like during the live stream, and this is one of those cases. When you say there's a lot of missing codes, can you clarify, do you mean that it's missing G codes? So this folder just opened up. So inside here, we're going to go to the Marlin 1.2. Then we'll go to the manual and we'll open it and see if it works. And it opens on my other screen. So we'll scroll down. And what we're looking for is information having to do with setting up UART. So it might be a little bit of a long trail to get down here. I'd move faster, but I don't want to confuse people. I just want to point out something while I'm here though. The power supply that we're using for the actual steppers has to be set on the in and VCC when using steppers. If we're going to load, which I'm going to do in USB, we're going to have to move the jumper over. So I'll show you what I'm talking about right now actually. So on the board, currently the jumper is set to USB, but I'm going to move it over to where it's normally supposed to be when running it, which is on USB or non-USB power. So if I plug this in, this won't work unless there's power. You'll see a light, but you won't be able to communicate with the board. So I'm going to disconnect that and move it over, and then you'll hear a beep when it connects. So now it's on USB power. Unfortunately, we can't load the firmware on this currently directly to it, so I'm going to use a little USB tool that we have here to drop the drive in. So I'll drop it in here, and then I'll put this in the computer so we can put the firmware on it. And let me go back over to the desktop for a second on the computer, and we'll find what we were talking about originally, which is UART. So down here, after we get past all this, we'll find our actual jumper pins. So stepper is step direction mode. That would be like the A4988 or the DRD8825. But if we go a little further down, we have UART mode. And so in this case, we've got to find what the jumper settings are. And in this case, it says use the jumper over here. So we're going to go back over to the workbench on my computer's desk. And we're going to have to pull these jumpers out. And these jumpers are actually used for SPI communication. So I'm just going to pull these up and pull them out. Then I'm going to take the jumper and put it on the UART, which is the little black jumper over here for these two pins. If I can get it to stick in there. And then I'm going to push it down. So that's all you have to do to set UART on this board. You also have to know where the enable pin is. So I'm going to show you that real quick because you don't want to blow up your steppers. So if I go over to my desk again, inside here, we need to find out where the enable pin is located. Now I technically know it's here, but I'm going to show you how to verify it. You can verify it on the silk screen of the board, or you can verify it in another folder over here. There's a pins manual usually, so if we go over here, normally they'd show you in great detail where it is, which is up here. So now that we know that, we can go back over to the workbench, and we need to know where the enable pin is located on our stepper. So we have to look at it very closely, and as you can see, one of the ways you can tell is you look at the actual silk screen. So I'm going to see if I can zoom in on this, if you can see it. Otherwise, I'll move it into that. Okay, so you see the EN? That's the pin that needs to be aligned with the enable pin right by my finger. So let's do that. So I'll pick it up, verify where it needs to go, align it over where the connections are, and push it down. So we're all set with that. Next, we need to set up the actual firmware. So I'm going to go over to my desktop again, and I'm going to go into VS Code. Inside VS Code, we notice that there's an issue with compile. So the issue is really simple. It's I forgot to set something. As you can see, it says serial.h everywhere. So if you go to configuration.h and you go up here, your first serial port is going to be for your actual printer board in this case. Other people do it other ways, but this is the way I do it. So I'm going to hit the checkbox again and see if that fixes the actual breakage. At least you get to see me make errors. So that's possibly going to build without issue, and then we can go on to other modifications. This is how I normally set my board up, is I do one step at a time so I can see where I've broken something. If I do everything at once or use an example file, I might be confused because I might miss something. So now that that works, we're going to do a search on the A4988, and down here the default stepper right now for the X is the A4988, which is a step dir, but we're using the TMC2208, so I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to paste it right here. So we're all set with that. There is modifications that you can make with this, but they're related to the advanced configuration. So if you search on 800, you can see right here, this number is going to be related to it. So it's a number that doubles binary wise. So this is 2 to the 4th, I think. Let's see, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 0, or the power of 0, is 1. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But basically, in this case, it's going to go 16, 32, 64 in that sequence for this, all the way up to 256. But if you do that, you also have to do the same over here. But for now, I'm going to leave that alone because I don't want to confuse people. So we're good there. So what we want to try and do is actually load the firmware. So I'm going to do another build, but I'm going to also show you that in here we already have done a build. So there is a firmware.bin. Good habit to get into when doing builds is do a clean first. That gets rid of all the old stuff. And then you can see that this folder is actually empty now. So now we can do an actual build of what we had. So this might take a second. On this board, I've obviously shown a million times how to deal with it, but it looks like we've got some kind of issue here. So what seems to be the issue? So let's try build again. So this time it worked. So there might be something going on with their build script. This is new to me. I may have updated the other day and didn't realize it. This might also be a cheat sheet task, or you might have to end these tasks. I'm not sure yet. But as is, you can just hit the build the second time to get around that problem. Hopefully. And that's all tied into platformio.ini. So let me see what's going on here. Okay, so now that this is built, I'm going to go over to .pio build SKR. I'm going to right click on this and say reveal in File Explorer. I'm going to bring this over here so you can see it. Right click again, and I'm going to send it to the E drive. So the E drive currently has firmware.cur, which is actually firmware.bin, just all in capital letters and renamed cur. Obviously it says cursor file type, but cur in this case means current. So if we were to use that, we'd rename it firmware.bin in lowercase to use it. But needless to say, we're just going to copy a new one over by doing a send to, and we now have that. So I'm going to go back over to the computer in a second, or the desk where we have the board, unplug the USB, plug in the USB. Now we're going to be actually using steppers, so we have to actually connect our power supplies. So there's two power supplies. There's one for board logic and there's one for the actual motors down here. Now I put a red mark here and a black mark here. You can probably still see the red, or my camera's really bad, so I'll mark it again. But normally I do this so I don't connect things backwards, and that's one way to keep me from cooking another board. But I'll show you where that's derived from. If we go over to the desktop and we pull up the actual PDF, you can see over here it says plus minus. So this is voltage, ground, voltage, ground. So we know that now, so that's why I do that marking. So I'm going to do the same with these actual clips that came with the board. So I'm going to slide these in one at a time, tighten it down. Then I'm going to do the same for the ground. And tighten that down. Now I'm going to do the same over here. And finally the ground. So before we plug anything in, I'm actually going to move this back over to direct power for the jumper. And I'm going to connect the USB, which will do nothing at the moment until we power this up. So now I'm going to gingerly find the actual power supply and plug it in, and we'll see what happens. Okay, it looks like it's flashing and it's loading. Now the other problem that we're going to have is the motor's not going to move, so I have to power it down. I'm pretty sure the firmware is loaded, so I'm going to remove the power for a second, and I'm going to connect the actual stepper with the DuPont connector, and I'm going to plug it back in. So let's go over to Pronterface and see what's going on here. So inside Pronterface, we're going to run into an issue. We don't always know what the COM port is. It might not show up. So my trick for this is really simple. You go over and you go Device Manager. Inside Device Manager, you're going to find the ports. On this, it's a desktop, so port 1 is COM1, but it's port 13 or COM port 13. So here, we're going to type a 3 after the 1. And then what we'll do is we'll connect back up to this. So I'm going to click connect. And as you can see, something happened. I don't know exactly what, but it says could not connect. The baud rate's not right. So let's try a faster baud rate and connect. And it's still not working. So that's not good. So now I got to troubleshoot this problem. So the port is on, but it's not communicating. That's very interesting. So did I do something incorrect? Am I using the wrong COM port? So let's try connect again. Obviously it's not working. So let's go over and check in VS Code to see what possibly could have gone wrong. So in VS Code, if we go over to configuration.h and we search on motherboard, they may have made a change and I don't know it yet. So we have the right serial port theoretically, and then down here we have a speed of 250,000. So theoretically you'd think that works. So they do have something new. It says baud rate G code. I don't know exactly what that is, but it says enable G code M575 to set the baud rate. That might be an auto change for the speed, but for now I'm going to ignore that. -1 should work, so there might be something that's broken. But what we're going to do is power everything down, or we're going to check to make sure I powered everything up. So we're going to cheat. So I'm going to go over to the desktop for a second. I'm going to pull the power. I'm going to disconnect this. I'm going to wait for it to discharge, and I'm going to move it over to here for the moment for USB power just to see if it's working. So I'm going to connect, then I'm going to go over to Pronterface on my computer, and I'm going to try and connect again. And apparently it's not working. So it could be something having to do with Cura being open. So genius that I am, when I open Cura, it grabs the port. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back over to the desk for a second. I'm going to disconnect this. I'm going to move this back where it once was, plug this in, and then power it back up with the power supply. And we'll try this again. So over here, I'll click connect, and now it's online. So that's one of the errors of having Cura open. It makes you look kind of goofy if this happens. So let's try moving 10 to see what happens. So it moves 10. Let's move it a little bit more. So it moves fine. Let's try going back the other way. So that appears to be working. So I'm not exactly sure what issue is occurring in the other person's setup, but it's probably one of the mistakes that I made while I was trying to do this. So let's see what other questions we have here real quick. If you right click the start button, the context menu has a device manager. True. One of the reasons I tell people to do it the simple way of just search is so they know what it's called first. But yeah, he's saying that if you go over to the desktop, you can sometimes find other functionality here or over here. So device manager, that's the quick route to get there. But the reason I type it out is because sometimes in some of my videos, when I say something in English, I have to translate it later on. So it's easier for me to say the whole thing and type out and show people what I'm doing. Apparently the wannabe famous guys here again, or two of them. Anyways, at least they're viewing. So let's see. Can I share Cursey Ender 5 Plus settings on Discord? Yeah, you can post your stuff on Discord. I don't have an Ender 5, obviously. I have an Ender 3, but what's the issue with the Ender 5? There's a lot of missing codes. So you're saying you're using an Ender 5 and there's missing G codes? That might be due to example files. Sometimes when the example files are posted for configurations, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let me just first see what you can see. There we go. So if we're on the web page, over here they have view downloads. This will bring you to configurations such as example files. The configurations part is a misnomer. These are examples only. So if you click in here, you can see the actual example files that they're using for each. So it looks like someone's saying that they put a comment in here saying they updated Z-Safe homing description. So maybe something was done on these 2 days ago, because it appears to be everywhere. But these are not always up to date. So if we look for the Cura or Creality, excuse me, I mean Creality, we can look for the Ender 5 Plus and Pro. Inside here, they have a couple of different versions. It looks like they're saying use the SKR E3, and that's the board type for the turbo version of it with a BL Touch. Then they have just without the turbo. Then it looks like they have a Mini, which is another version of the board. And then they have the E3-2. There's probably other versions, but basically the trick to doing this is figuring out what the configuration is and then doing it, or just put in the stuff you want and go from there. But they do this as an example to show you what to do. So let's see. I think he's talking about the contents of the files being different. The Ender 5 Plus source is very old, which is why files are smaller. So so you're saying that it's 8-bit. Okay. So they're using a template like this. So if you go in here and you scroll down to like where the motherboard is, you'll see some weird stuff going on. So they're using a Metzi board. That might be a 8-bit board that they're referring to in this case. The way to get around that is to rename it to the board type that you're working with. So in this case, it would be like SKR Pro instead. But they also do some funky things with pins to adjust depending upon the board type. Let me see if I can find an example of it. So let's go back one, see if it's in here. I've seen this before. I don't know if they took it out. So nope, it's not in this one. They've actually done a lot of changes on these, but they may not be up to date. Let's try this. What I'm looking for is they're adjusting the pins inside here instead of adjusting the whole file. But I don't see any examples of that other than they're changing the board name. And obviously they're doing some weird stuff with speed. Boards technically can communicate faster, but they might just do that on purpose. And the one gives away it's an 8-bit board probably. But usually it's 0 that you would use for that number in that case, so this might be incorrect. Something like the Marlin 112. So Marlin 112 is actually an older configuration. So if you go over to the releases and you go down here, well, let me see if I can find it. You got 1.1.9 is the oldest release that they have. Obviously it's not showing up here. I don't know if that's an error, but we can look over here and get to it. So You can see it here and download it here. So let's see if we can skip over to it here. So we have examples, and then they have very little examples on the older stuff, but there's an Ender 4, Ender 3, Ender 2. So if we were to look in this one, we might see an example of what you're talking about. So you can see that there's only one serial port. They're using a ramps board for this, and they may adjust pins on this one. I don't remember, but I don't see it adjusted. But this is an older file. Most people have moved to the 2.0 version because there's more functionality, and you can use it with 8-bit or 32-bit. So the Ender 5 Plus is using something like Marlin 1.1.2. Maybe this is what you're referring to, the older release. That's I think 2012 release. I could be wrong on the date. They don't give me an easy way to check it. So we could find out when that's released, but usually like 1.1.9 was 2019. And this one is 2020. And then this is what they're releasing. I guess they don't follow the months anymore. It's just how many releases they do. But this should be like 2021 for this year, unless they change that standard. Or I'm totally confused, which would be more likely the case. Let's see. Sources available on the Creality website. That's the only place you can get it. So let's see if we can find it. Creality website. So if you go over here, let's see if we can find the Ender 3 source. Filament, accessories, spare parts, Ender series, Ender 5 DIY, download the latest firmware. Sorry, it's the first time I've actually downloaded from here, so it's going to take me a second to move around. Let's see, slicer build. These are all slicers. That's an MSI installer and a zip. Okay. Ender series. I might be going in circles here. Or you might need to post a link for me to find it. You can post it on Discord. I'm not sure if you can do it inside here. Let's see, I don't know which firmware it is using, but they put very little settings on the LCD screen than the Ender 3 version 2. You can add more settings. The way that you do that, though, is with the basic Marlin. You're going to be missing settings. If you go over to like configuration.h and you search on LCD, or what is it, LCD and SD support, I think. So if you search for LCD and SD support, some of the menus can be added here, and then there are other ones that float around. There's different types of menus. And then there's a slim menu. Usually that's due to movement, pardon me. But there's not a lot of stuff in there, this part. But if you search for further down, it might be an actual configuration advanced. Let me search, pardon me. So LCD, you can define filament in the display here. This is under advanced configuration. But if you keep searching on LCD, there's probably other stuff. So you have another custom menu that you can add. You might have other stuff in here that you may be able to add. I don't know without testing it. But as you can see, there's a lot of functionality that you can enable for your custom menu configuration. I've never done it, but it's pretty simple. You just remove the comment with a control/, and that enables it, like so. Or you can comment it back. So there's a tab on the left for firmware. Hang on, let me go back over there. It's a tab on the left for firmware. On this screen or a previous screen. So let's go back and see. Ender 5 Plus. More, a tab on the left. Download, tab on the left. Ender series. Okay, so this is 2021. You're gonna have to direct me, expand the Ender 5 Plus. Okay, Ender 5 Plus 3D printer. This one. And inside here they have, it looks like, this is hex, so that's pre-compiled. So I'll show you what hex looks like. It's hexadecimal, which means 1 through, or 0 through A are the letters in hex. And that's a way to specify a binary value as well. But I don't want to get too much into that. But we use binaries usually. So let's see what we can download here. Compensation execution codes. Let's see what this does. So I'm downloading this. I'm going to go over and check to see what's going on here. So we just pulled this down. So let's just see what it looks like. So it looks like G codes. Not sure what the G codes are, but I don't know why they just zipped one thing. So let's try extracting it to see what it is. Oh wow, that's not a lot of information. So inside here it says M851, looks like the Z-axis, and then move it 1.2 maybe, and then there's a M500. So let's see what it means. So if we go over here and we go to help, configuration, G codes, all documents, we can find out what the M code is. In this case, here it is, it's Z probe offset. So they're saying what's going on with it. So it looks like they removed it. It was there. It probably is now on GitHub. That may be true. But I'm not exactly sure what they're posting. Unfortunately, I don't work for either Creality or SKR or MKS. I work for myself, even though this isn't really work. This is more a hobby. But it's more to get you guys interested in what you're doing. So the other G code was M500, which is right here, save settings. So essentially that G-code file doesn't tell me much other than offset and then save it. And the G-code is saving to EEPROM, which is rewritable memory. The old rewritable memory, by the way, could be erased with just sunlight, but that's really old. Okay, so let's see. I finished the settings, and it gave me an error. What error did it give you? Or post your file on Discord, and I'll pull it down and we'll take a look. Let me go over to the general real quick. So in open chat, it looks like you may have posted it already and I wasn't paying attention. So let me grab these. And my computer is going to give me a hard time about pulling them down, so give me a second here to see what's going on. Okay, let's go over to the folder and see if it worked. So I was able to grab 2 of them, so I got to go back and get the other one. So let's see, advanced, and then the regular. Okay, now I got all 3. So what I'm going to do is show you guys how to check this real quick, but I need to go over to my downloads folder and check something before I actually try and load these. So I'm going to open one of these up, and I'm going to go to version, because I want to make sure we're working on the same version. Now it looks like this is 2.0.8.1, so it's an older version of the actual firmware. So I might have trouble loading that with 2.0.9.1 unless they forgot to update this, so we can check that real quick. So if I go over to VS Code, go to configuration, go to the top, we can see what the number says. So there are 2 different versions that I'm working with versus what you're working with. So I have to roll back mine to get to that version. So I'm going to close this out real quick. I'm not going to need to save it. So I need to go over to Marlin to grab the older version to see what's going on. So in order to do that, we'll go to downloads. And then I got to search around here. This might take a second. So we're going to look for the previous release. So I believe it's a tagged build. So it's 8.0.2, which would be this one or this one. Let me review real quick. It's 1. So if I click on here, I can actually pull it. So I can pull the code, download it as a zip, save it. This might take a second, and we'll go back over to the downloads folder, and hopefully it won't be confusing. So it's right here, so I'm going to right click, I'm going to extract it again, I think it's time to upgrade the processor in my computer so it's a little bit more zippy. And inside this folder, apparently they have the example config, so I grabbed the wrong thing. So let's go back over to the browser. And what we need to do is actually go to Marlin firmware. We'll go to Marlin, and in here we'll find the right version, hopefully. So tagged builds. So here's what we're looking for. So we'll download that. And hopefully I've got this right. So let's check over here. So it looks like this is it. So I'm going to right click, extract all, and this should take a little bit longer. So I'm actually going to be testing what your error is in a second. And I'll show you how to do that as soon as I get this open. Now, do you know if this is an example file you're using, or are you using an actual one that you modified? The something? Anyways, open this up. We're going to actually trade in your files for this. So I'm going to minimize this for a second. I'm going to grab this file and this file, copy it, go back over to the other screen, paste it over the other ones, and then I'm going to call these new and call the other one new. This way I can delineate them between each other. I may have to rename them for the extensions, so I'm going to change those. So I'm going to call that .new, and I'm going to call this .new. And then we'll rename the other ones to .h. And this one to .h. And hopefully I'm naming them correctly. Then we'll go back over to VS Code, click on Explorer, open file. We'll go to the Downloads folder, we'll open this, and then we'll say select the subfolder. Now there's a problem with this right now because I'm missing something. So what we need to do is actually close out and click on the platform IO. I got to fix that because I forgot to copy it. So let's go back over to these folders. Here's the one, but we need to go find platform IO. So I need to right click on that, copy it, go back over into this folder, and platform IO I think is up here. So we're going to paste it. And then I'm going to delete the other one because I don't care about that one. Rename this .ini. And then say OK. Then I'll go back over here and reopen it. And hopefully we fixed everything so that we can run it. So this is your file that all I have to do now is actually hit compile. So that looks okay. Hang on, let me close that. So I'm going to do a clean first because I might have something in the folder. And now I'm going to do a build and see what happens. Yeah, I'll look at the actual website in a second for the forums. So it looks like it fails. So it says utilityspy.com. So in order to find out what this is, let's try clicking here with the control button and finding out what they're talking about. So it's an include spy int set 8 bits always. Copy spy. So I'm not exactly sure what's trying to be configured, obviously, because I can't see it. So what we'll do is we'll go over and we'll try and sort out what this is. So I'm going to go over to configuration.h, and I'm going to find the motherboard and verify things real quick. So that looks correct. That looks correct. So there's something going on with SPI possibly. Not exactly sure what's going on with SPI. But what we can do is we can try and build this from scratch. So we're going to cheat, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to do this piecemeal. So if we go to this folder, we can compare this to this, or excuse me, this and this. Right click, then go to diff for Tortoise SVN, and we can see what the differences are. So let me bring this over here. So it looks like you filled in your name, which shouldn't be an issue. You changed the port, which is okay. Looks like you're using a TFT display as well. There's something different about this, but it's not a big deal because it's commented out. Except there's a port speed which doesn't seem to be in the other one, but it's up here. Okay, so it's just out of order. Obviously the printer boards are different. Naming of the printer board doesn't matter. Just trying to locate what's different. So it might be an issue with the actual firmware, but we can build it from scratch and see what happens. Okay, here's another difference. NeoPixel. So we could try commenting out or uncommenting the NeoPixel. There's also something going on over here where they're different. I'm not sure what the source nature of your file is, meaning did it come from a website? Like, was it an example file or something? But this appears slightly different. Not sure what this value is, but obviously I'm not sure of everything. But we can try this real quick by commenting it out and commenting this out. This is already commented out actually, but that's the only difference I see that's really big. So let's do a search on NeoPixel, and in this case it's going to be 4. So it has no comment in this file by default. So I'm going to search on this by copying it. I'll go back over to here. I'll do a Control F and I'll paste in what we're searching for. I'm going to remove the comment just to see what's going on, and then I'm going to try a compile. We can also do the same for the advanced configuration because that might be related to it as well. But the error is still there. So it might be missing an include, or the spelling of the include might be off. So what we can do is I'm going to roll this back to the previous build and see if it actually, or not the previous build, the previous files to see if it builds, because I'm pretty sure it does. So I'm going to go over to my downloads folder. I'm going to go into the extracted folder, and I'm going to go into the Marlin folder. I'm going to delete these 2 files. I'm going to rename these back to what they were. Actually, a quicker way to do this is just to go up here, delete the file if it's not in use, which in this case it is. and do that. That was configuration. That was the Marlin. And then we can unzip it again and we can test it forwards. So usually I go to extract all and extract it like normal. And we'll see what happens. Of course, extracting this takes a moment. So, in theory, there might be something else going on that I can file compare out, but it's easier to start from scratch. So let's go back into VS Code, open this up and see if there's an actual compile issue. So downloads, go into this, select. We're going to go to the INI file real quick, search on SKR Pro, copy the default environment. Sorry, I'm doing this out of order from the way I normally do it. I'm going to go to the INI, change the board type, paste it. Then I'm going to go over, minimize this, go to the Marlin folder, source folder, core folder, boards.h, search on SKR _ Pro, copy the 2.0 version, close out of that, go over to configuration.h, search on motherboard, paste it on the ramps, and we have to change this to -1 obviously, and let's see if it builds. So I'm going to do a clean, and then I'm going to do a build. And hopefully this will build and not give us an issue. So it looks like the base configuration with those 3 minor changes actually works. What I would do is go through the file with a file compare, find the settings that you want to change and change them one at a time, and see if you can find that error. So I don't know who Kersey's file is, but I'm guessing that's up in the forums. Obviously I'm not Kersey. I think that's his work, but one of the things you can do to figure out what's going on is this. Just find the differences. So here's your file. So if we copy these 3 files, put them in here, you can go line by line and find the issues. So I'm going to paste that there. I'm going to cut this out, put it over here, and you can do a file compare on these 2. And this is my trick to figure out what a setting is, by the way. So as you look at Kersey's file, or I'm sorry, your file versus the regular config file, there may be issues here. It looks like this is pre 8.1, or I'm sorry, 2.0.8.1, only because this is different. You can tell right here that that might be causing an issue because they changed the directory structure a while ago, but it could be that it's down below and I'm not seeing it. But this is an older INI file, it looks like. Yeah, it's definitely older because all of these are pre 2.0.8. They're 2.0.7 something. So that might be one of the issues, is he's using an old platform.io.ini file. Because remember, those files point to what you need to do for your environment. So the platform.io ini points to specific files that may be updated for a particular build. And the one on the left is older. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know what his configuration is. I can build up a configuration from scratch, but I can tell you that the ini on the left is older. So my technique in your case would be to download Marlin, build it with the base 3 things that you're working with first, being the configuration.h, config advanced, and platform that come with the download from Marlin's website. Change the 3 things being your motherboard, your default environment, and the serial USB port. Compile, make sure it works. If it does, you're good there. Then go through and see what changes occurred in the one file, and one at a time go through and change those and compile each one. Unfortunately, for me to go through someone else's work, it's a little difficult because I don't know what their thought process was, being Kersey Fabrications. I don't want to comment on their work, but obviously things have changed since they probably did their video. The best person to ask is probably Kersey, but he's probably going to tell you that the firmware has changed from the time he did the tutorial to present. Because obviously I've done tutorials just like Kersey, that back in 2016 we were only on Marlin 1.1.5 or 6, and now we're on 2.0.9.1. So obviously there's changes constantly occurring, so the videos at that time worked, and they do change over time. But does anybody else have any other questions, comments, concerns? Anybody that's been posting either on the Patreon, thank you in advance. If anybody's been doing super chats and I missed it, thank you in advance. And of course, if anybody's doing anything on PayPal, thank you in advance as well. Unfortunately, I don't have the alerts set up right now, so I can't see what's occurring. But normally I just view what you guys are saying in chat. So at this point though, I'm going to take a break because I'm starting to stutter because I'm getting tired. And I'll be back online Friday to do another live stream. But I'm backing off of live streams due to the heat. We have, 85% humidity. And it's usually 90 degrees outside, so it's a little hard to function. Today's a little bit better. So I'll be posting some new videos hopefully tonight if I get a chance to sit down and work on them and it's not super hot in the kitchen. But everyone, thank you for taking the time to hang out with me. And I'll catch up with you guys later on. And happy holidays if you're celebrating this weekend, and be safe. Wear a mask if you're in a state that doesn't vaccinate or doesn't have high vaccination. And get vaccinated if you can. So take care, everyone. Night.